Tales from the Beachside, a tribute to museum volunteer Barbara Safuto. Today, the Flagler Avenue walking tour hears about the life and times of Hannah Bonnet.
Hannah was the first woman mayor in town, 1954. She was smart and she was funny. Two good things for a woman in the 50s if she's going to go into government. Because, of course, they didn't much want her on the board. This is after the two towns merged. This was one town called Coronado Beach. That was another town called New Smyrna. Finally, in 1946, they merged, and it became New Smyrna Beach. Now, she who had been living here all this time, who was also the first woman realtor, said, "They've been pushing me around in that city hall in New Smyrna forever. I'm going to do some pushing back." So she did. She ran for office, didn't make it the first time, didn't make it the second time. Third time, she had figured out what she should say. She went to all of the women's clubs that she belonged to and said, "Ladies, I want you to know that I'm going to be running for town council, and I hope you vote for me." That's how she started. By the time she got to the third time, she was saying, "Ladies, I want you to remember, I'm the one that got you the right to vote," which she did. She was head of women's suffrage in all of Volusia County. And that's not all. It's a secret ballot. So no matter who your husband tells you to vote for, you can vote for me. She finally got in, 13 votes. Okay, we're going to start our walk this way. Hannah lived down on the river, about where the Dummets lived. And she lived there her whole life. Her father was editor of the local newspaper, and they gardened hard. They didn't farm exactly, but they always had a couple of black guys around that would work in the garden, and Hannah took that over when she turned about 20. She had finished school in New Smyrna, gone through high school, and gone through 2-year teacher training at Stetson University. Quite remarkable for somebody born in 1891. So, anyhow, when the 20s came, her father had a lot of property here on Beachside. How come? Because he liked to trade. One time he traded a microscope for 45 acres of Beachside. Another time, 2 Pullman car tickets from here to New York City, 75 acres. And he had been doing this all along. Nobody wanted to live beachside. Everybody finds that unusual, but it was because they didn't know when hurricanes would come or northeasters would come or anything. It wasn't until after 1900, after the Galveston storm, when the United States Weather Department got shamed into building some hurricane detection centers. And of course, they weren't that great in the beginning, so not many people came over. But as time went on, as the bridge was built, and everybody started coming, more and more people would come over here. Okay, in the 1920s, it just went crazy all over Florida. All these people came down, they were gonna make a fortune. I swear, they thought they could just take orange seeds, throw them in the ground, poof, orange grove, but it doesn't work like that. It takes a lot of work. And they were building hotels, they were building tourist places, they were doing everything. The population doubled. And at this time, her father had Hannah get her notary stamp. And so she had her notary seal, and she would notarize the sales. And that was very important because it was going so fast that sometimes one piece of property would change hands 3 times in one day, always at a higher price. So as you can imagine, this is a good time, but it didn't last long. Our depression started in 1926. And at that time, everybody just stopped any projects and left. So that's how it was in the beginning of the 30s, too. In 1931, Hannah's mother died. And so in those days, you had to be in mourning for a year. So she went out and bought a black dress and hat. Then the next year, her father died. Another year of mourning. 2 years later than that, Hannah had been married. Her husband died. And she was left with a 7-year-old daughter too. That's right, never got out of the black. And so she had to do something. So she and her sister, who was 12 years older than she, took over the house, the family house. Her sister took all of her mother's jewelry and some good furniture and stuff like that. Hannah took all the property. Within 2 years, she had lost half of it, just to property taxes. No foreclosures, nothing like that, just property taxes. And so at the time she said, well, you can't eat dirt, so I better learn how to sell it. So she went to a friend of hers house. The husband was a realtor. She said to her friend, could I borrow the realty book from your husband? She asked the husband. Husband says, we don't need no women realtors around here. Isn't it bad enough they're women drivers? So she knew that wasn't going to work. So the friend said, don't worry, Hannah. Look in the back seat of your car. Nobody locked anything in those days. In the back seat of your car tomorrow morning, it'll be there. And sure enough, it was. So she studied it. She bought a round-trip ticket from here to Jacksonville by train, because that's where the next test was going to be. Went to Jacksonville, took the test, came back, waited 3 long weeks, and then she got her license.
What year was that?
That year was 1937. So now she can sell property, but there's nobody to buy it. So she goes to all of her friends who own cottages and says, if I could find a renter, could I rent the property for you? And of course, they're all going to say yes, because they know there's no renters. But she persisted, and little by little, she started getting renters. And what really helped was Second World War. In the Second World War, we had a lot of Navy guys, we had Coast Guard guys, and we had Army Air Force guys. And so she could rent these little cottages to their families for a few days. They'd get a couple days leave, and they could come down and see them. And that's how she pretty well made it until things were really better. So that was Hannah's story.